council have kept in close touch with what's going on for SR 14, what the plans are there, which I think most people probably are not all that aware of. But we need to be planning for our future given the completion of that project and the changes that it makes, especially as it impacts the intersection at Washougal River Road. And I agree also that the future of our economic development is Woodburn Hill and Mount Norway. And if you look at the foresightedness and the abilities of people like former Mayor Nan Hendrickson in Camas in understanding that what creates the future, what creates the possibility of economic development is in fact infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, and power. Those are issues that the city can work on, and given the time spans that it takes to make those things happen, we have test wells for new water that we drilled down in the east end of the port. The best estimate is there's plenty of water there, but the best estimate as to how long it takes to get a state license to take the water out of the ground is 15 years, plus or minus 2. And that hasn't even, you haven't even begun to plan water lines and water treatment at that point. That's just to get the permit to take the water out of the ground. So we need to be thinking well into the future, way beyond the horizon that I think most people feel comfortable planning. And a plan is more like it tells you how to react when things happen. It doesn't say this is how it's going to be. It says when this happens, we'll do this. If this happens, we'll do something else. But it's very important that we get into the long-range planning for first SR 14 because it's so current. There will be a project that is complete in less than 3 years that will completely change SR 14 as it comes across Lady Island. It will eliminate the 2 traffic lights. Ours will be the only traffic light between Vancouver and the Bridge of the Gods. Then the next phase is, in fact, where do we go next? Where do we grow next? Where do we create space for more jobs? Jobs are in many ways much more difficult to create than housing. You can put houses in places that I think most people would be surprised about. But if you're talking about an industrial facility, the requirements are pretty narrow. So I encourage people to try and think in those terms. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from council? Dave?
I would ask the staff to take a careful look at Mr. Olson's recommendations. I had a chance to review them twice while he was developing them. I find some value in these things from a user outcome-oriented perspective. Not being a traffic engineer, I wouldn't presume to try to do the engineering on it, but it looks like it would solve a lot of problems and improve our trafficability in the local area. I would ask you to seriously consider those the next time you take a look at the plan. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Yes. Regarding the major roadway projects, priority MR1, that's the SR 14 and 15th, 27th, and 32nd improvements that we're talking about on the major roadway project chart here. I assume that the conceptual design they're talking about has already been turned in to WDOT for our, I'm assuming that that's what the issue is that we've requested some improvements at these streets, and these are the ones that include the roundabouts, is that correct?
Yeah, currently in the MTIP, Metropolitan Transportation Program, they do identify highway roundabouts within that plan, approved by DOT and RTC.
Oh, so these have already been accepted and approved, even though they're conceptual?
They're in the Metropolitan Plan.
I see. Is there any way that the current council can get a copy or a
Yes.
reminder of the conceptual design plans? Because if we do start discussing this, we might want to look at readjusting the priorities on the list.
Yes, we can provide that.
Dave?
Are we stuck with a roundabout at this point?
No.
Yes, it's in the Metropolitan Plan currently. There are amendment opportunities. Obviously, we update our 6-year TIP annually. I believe RTC is required every 2 years. So there's amendment opportunities and reprioritization of projects.
So
Ron?
we could amend it to get rid of the roundabouts. What is the consequence of that?
Well, there's multiple impacts, obviously. Currently, it is supported regionally. All of the partners that I showed at the top of the presentation, including RTC and DOT, support highway roundabouts with the emphasis of a construction cost being significantly less than a full-blown intersection with a flyover. And that's what was presented to DOT and RTC in 2005 and 6.
I always appreciate people who look out for the taxpayer's dollar, but in this case, the impact of a roundabout would seem to be less favorable than more favorable. And we heard tonight about a possible alternative which would solve the same problems, some of them I think better, and avoid the disadvantages of a roundabout. I'd sure like to see those considered. Thank you.
Other comments from council?
Actually, I do. I wasn't going to say anything, but regarding comments that were made a few minutes ago by some of my fellow council members, talking about this as being just a plan, I want to refer to the resolution I'm looking at here. It says quite clearly that whereas the city collects an excise tax on each sale of real property in the city as provided in RCW 82.46.035, and this excise tax revenue must be used on projects included in the capital facilities plan element of the city's comprehensive plan. I just want to make sure that we are indeed taking the priority schedule seriously, and then we have a discussion, a serious discussion as a council after we hear the public comments. We will get a chance to do this, am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
You do every year. And please keep in mind, this isn't something that you're going to deal with today and it's in place for another 6 years. This thing is updated on a regular basis. I think one of the important things to keep in mind as you go through this is, this will sound a little odd, is not to necessarily get completely hooked into what the design of any one of these is.
No,
know,
not specific designs, but prioritizing.
Absolutely.
And whether or not